Good evening, everybody. Today I will be talking about IV thrombolysis in special situation. This is a part of Stroke Talk on digital platform, and I have been given 15 minutes to deliver this talk. So I will be very brief, and I will be dealing with only 4 special situations. Before that, what is thrombolysis? The basic is thrombolysis is dissolving the clot, and you have to dissolve the clot through intravenous route by giving a clot buster drug, that is RTPA. So that's why we call it IVT or IV thrombolysis. The 4 special situations which I will be dealing with is IV thrombolysis in the patients of accelerated hypertension, IV thrombolysis in patients with baseline hyperglycemia, IV thrombolysis in cardioembolic strokes, and IV thrombolysis in acute ischemic stroke patients with recent MI history. Before going to these social situations, I just want to show you, this is the silver jubilee year of the NINDS trial. NINDS trial was published in 1995, and it has changed the perspective of management of acute ischemic stroke by authenticating the use of IV thrombolysis. Before NINDS trial, there was no IV thrombolysis across the world. There was no approval. And within few years of the NINDS trial, as you can see, the IV thrombolysis has been used worldwide with approval all across the globe. And in India, if you want to see, India also in last 10 years or so, the IV thrombolysis has increased 10-fold. So how this IV thrombolysis has increased all over the world and in India? It is mainly by 3 methods. First is by educating general people that IV thrombolysis is an option. If you come to hospital early within window period, then IV thrombolysis can be done. So we are getting more patients. Second, to use technology, particularly the imaging technology with the help of MRI. Even after the window period, we can find out that where is the pneumonia, and you can identify certain candidates up to 9 hours. And third is that there is some relaxation in the selection criteria of IV thrombolysis. Whenever any new drug comes, we are very concerned about the safety, and our selection criteria are very rigid. As we become familiar with the drug and we develop confidence, then there is a relaxation in selection criteria which has increased in which has caused the increase in number of IV thrombolysis patients. So coming to these 4 special situations, first situation is IV thrombolysis in a patient who has accelerated hypertension. See, acute hypertensive response is quite common within 24 hours of the stroke. And as you know that whether pre-existing hypertension is there or not there, there is a reactionary rise of blood pressure, then high creatinine, diabetes, and the Cushing reflex, that is rising BP in response to raised intracranial pressure, all can cause hypertension in acute ischemic stroke setting. And up to 82% of the patients presenting to emergency department with acute stroke have a systolic blood pressure that is higher than 140 mmHg. But this is not our cutoff level. Our cutoff level for IV thrombolysis is that BP should be less than 185 and 110. BP of 140, 150, 150 doesn't affect us in decision making for IV thrombolysis. Now, this is international stroke trial, a well-known trial, and this U-shaped curve, that very low and very high BP result in a relatively worse outcome. Now, coming again to the blood pressure in acute ischemic stroke, we know that ideal blood pressure targets are usually not fixed. In acute stroke, it depends upon what was the pre-morbid blood pressure, how many drugs patient is on, and we usually talk about in terms of percentage decrease in blood pressure rather than a fixed decrease. But when we are planning to do IV thrombolysis, then the level is fixed, that is 185 and 110. BP should be brought below this level, then only we can do IV thrombolysis. So this one particular situation, the level is fixed, and then this level has to be maintained below 180 and 105 throughout the next 24 hours. So this is one difference. And these are American Heart and Stroke Association guidelines, and we are very well aware of these guidelines. Labetalol is easily available drug, very effective, can be given repeatedly, and is usually our first choice for IV thrombolysis, and then we have nicardipine and clevidipine and all other drugs are there. These days, usually we hardly miss any patient because we are not able to bring down the BP or like that. Most of the patients we are able to bring down the blood pressure below the desired level. And these are guidelines that how to monitor once you have bring down the blood pressure and given IV thrombolysis, then how you should monitor it. So it is like management monitor BP every 15 minutes for 2 hours from the start of alteplase therapy, and then every 30 minutes and so on and so. So now I will come to certain points which appeared very relevant to me. See, if you see the management of hypertension in pre-intravenous thrombolysis era, then there was a dictum that there is no need to lower BP till there is a target organ damage, means there is a CHF or dissection of dissecting aneurysm or something like that, some retinal target organ damage or kidney target organ damage, because if you rapidly lower the BP, it may worsen the blood flow and the infarct will expand because the penumbra may get converted into infarct. So until and unless there is a target organ damage, we should not lower the BP. That was the dictum. Now, what has happened in IVT era, that we know that higher the BP, there are more chances of hemorrhagic transformation and symptomatic intracranial hemorrhage. So what we do rapid lowering of blood pressure to the target level. So we could administer the IV thrombolysis. So this is a little bit contradictory, or there is a contrast between the two. On one hand, we don't want BP to rapidly lower because of expansion of infarct, and in this case, we want to lower it very rapidly so we can give IVT within window period. So we have to balance these two things out. And we should realize that recanalization rate with IV thrombolysis is 14 to 33% only, depending upon the size of blood vessel and other factors. So 67 to 86% of patients are still prone to infarct expansion because their vessel is not opened even after IVT, and we have lowered the BP rapidly. So infarct expansion can happen. Secondly, subtype of stroke, sometimes we don't know in emergency room that what kind of ischemic stroke it is. It may be a hemodynamic stroke with reactive rise, transient rise in blood pressure, and rapidly bringing down the blood pressure may actually worsen the stroke. So we should target reasonable lowering of blood pressure just below the target level. Because I have seen intensivists and physicians are very enthusiastic about lowering the blood pressure once IVT is given. So they want BP to be 130, 140. 170 BP bothers them. So it should not be the case. We just lower it below the target level, and you do a quick angio after IVT. So you should ascertain the subtype of the ischemic stroke also. Now the second special situation is IV thrombolysis in patients with baseline hyperglycemia. As hypertension, hyperglycemia is also common in stroke patients, more than 40% more frequently diabetic patients. And we know that if hyperglycemia is there, there is a worse outcome in the stroke, both in terms of symptomatic intracerebral hemorrhage and in terms of neurological recovery. So blood glucose and ischemic stroke, how it exacerbates neural damage because it causes lactic acidosis, glucose-rich environment, and oxygen is not there, so anaerobic respiration causing lactic acidosis, oxidative stress, abnormal transport signaling, and ineffective collaterals due to impaired cerebrovascular reactivity, all results in increased neuronal damage. And then there is a dysfunction of blood-brain barrier, and there is a long-term vascular injury associated with hyperglycemia, which increases the chances of symptomatic intracerebral hemorrhage. So what to do? There is a trial by the name of Shine's trial about strict control of glucose in acute ischemic stroke, that is 80 to 130 mg through IV insulin versus regular control, that is 140 to 180 by sliding scale. Is the strict control better? Patients who underwent both IVT or no IVT but acute ischemic strokes were included, and this trial showed that strict control doesn't offer any benefit, and tendency of hypoglycemia is more. So our conservative method of controlling blood sugar may be better, that is 140 to 180 is a more reasonable target. So hypoglycemia, that is with sugar less than 50, it remains to be an absolute contraindication for IV thrombolysis because it is a strong stroke mimic. So you once you corrected the glucose and you documented that patient has not improved and it is a clear-cut stroke, then only you can do IVT. Otherwise, you can't. But hyperglycemia, which was absolute contraindication if it is more than 400, is now only a relative contraindication. So we know that hyperglycemia remains a predictor of relatively worse outcome, but we should understand that too strict control is not beneficial and IVT has to be administered even if the sugars are high. Outcome may be worse, but it is still better to administer IVT rather than not to do it. Now, third special situation is IV thrombolysis in cardioembolic stroke. Why I am covering that is that I have received feedback from certain people that many physicians and some neurologists also feel that the IV thrombolysis is mainly for atherothrombotic stroke and cardioembolic stroke, it may not be helpful or may be detrimental, which is not the case. And we all know that high proportion of our strokes, ischemic strokes, are cardioembolic strokes, up to 25 to 30%. And this is a SITS East registry. It's a registry of more than 13,000 patients which analyzed and compared cardioembolic strokes with atherothrombotic stroke underwent IVT. And their NIHS was same, that is the stroke severity was same. And the result was that cardioembolic strokes did better, both in terms of functional outcome and the chances of symptomatic intracerebral hemorrhage was also less. So IVT is as effective, if not more, in cardioembolic stroke. That we have to understand, and that is the take-home message. If your patient is already on anticoagulant, then you have to check INR. It should be 1.7, less than that. And if cardioembolic stroke known patient is already on NOACs, then you can't administer IVT until you reverse it. So that you have to be careful. Otherwise, there is no contraindication, and you should thrombolize in cardioembolic stroke. And the last special situation is history of recent myocardial infarction. Recent myocardial infarction means myocardial infarctions within 3 months of acute ischemic stroke. So stroke following myocardial infarction or myocardial infarction following stroke is quite common because they share the common pathophysiological mechanism. And it is not uncommon to get a stroke with a recent MI. So recent MI was an absolute contraindication for intravascular thrombosis till 2013. And it has been modified to relative contraindication after that. And it has considered as reasonable to give IVT in acute MI setting in 2018. So the guidelines keep on changing and we are including more and more patients. And STEMI and non-STEMI MI have different implications. STEMI means ST segment elevation MI, which means that there is a transmural myocardial damage, and non-STEMI is non-ST elevation. And duration of 3 months is not absolute. Within these 3 months, what is the duration is also important. So what are the concerns for IVT in recent MI? The concern main is that it may cause myocardial rupture if recent MI and you have given IV thrombolysis, which can result in cardiac tamponade. There might be embolization if some ventricular thrombus is there. And then like in cardioembolic stroke, patient might be already on some drugs. So DAPT is not a contraindication now. Anticoagulation, you can check INR. Only NOACs are of concern because reversal agents are not easily available. So this is a small study published in Stroke 2019, 47 versus 55 patients, where they have shown that 4 patients died in treatment group out of cardiac rupture, proven or presumed. And all had STEMI within 1 week, but there was no difference in thrombosembolization, arrhythmias, and SIH. And if you have a concurrent MI and acute ischemic stroke, you should both treat simultaneously. So my take-home message about recent MI is that non-STEMI MI is not a contraindication, regardless of the duration. STEMI MI within 2 weeks may be considered as a strict contraindication. And from 2 weeks to 3 months, if recent MI is there, I think thrombolysis can be done looking at the individual patient profile. So here I will finish my talk and thank you so much for the patient listening.